Okay, so through this short 1 hour session, we'll just definitely talk about the definition of professionalism, start with that, but then we will have a discussion more practically, what are the different ways to practice professionalism in the workplace, both in person and remote. This is one of the survey actually through UFT, CCR, when they started to develop this whole CCR program, they started with employer research, asking what are the top essential workplace competencies employer would like to see from the recent graduates. And as you can see across board, it doesn't matter what kind of industry or discipline, some of them is very commonly required, like the top one. And then if there's a second one, that's actually professionalism. That tells you actually from this survey, it gives you some idea how important this is from employer side. What do they expect student to really demonstrate as a professional? And that's what we're gonna talk about. What's the underlying meaning behind this professionalism? And because it's something definitely expected from the employers, I just found this another survey did relatively recently through Job Outlook. They asked the employer and students to rate their different proficiencies in career readiness competencies. And one of them definitely is professionalism. And then they also ask about the other competencies. Basically, the red ones is student, how they rate themselves, how they think about themselves. And then the blue one is how employers rated, how they view the recent graduates they're hiring. As you can see, there's definitely a gap between how employer view and how students view. Unfortunately, students tend to view themselves better than what they were viewed by employers. This is a very interesting survey. Any insights, like any guess, what could be the possible reason behind here? Again, you can just share your thoughts in the chat box. Or you can even open your mic. Okay, this is a flexibility of a small group. If you feel like open your mic or share your thoughts in the chat box. When you look at this difference rating, there's a gap between how students view themselves and how employers view students in terms of professionals, which is the first one, / work ethic. What do you think could be the possible reason? Lack of understanding of company culture. Yes, totally. And this is really a good point. Basically, sometimes we talk about professionalism, although there are some common competency, common behaviors expected, but sometimes depends on the culture, could be quite different, right? So maybe what students think about the common ones, it's not enough for employers to really see the students demonstrate how they understand their own company culture. Which I think yesterday from the employer networking events and also even today, this morning, the keynote speakers emphasize a lot of company culture, finding the right fit. Not only at the early stage, you need to demonstrate your understanding, but definitely when you are in the company, that's even more important. And another, there's also an article associated to this. In the article, one of the argument is maybe for students, sometimes they are not used to the 9-to-5 structure yet. Throughout the student life, their lifestyle would be quite different from working as a professional, which is more structured 9-to-5. And that could be the possible reason. That's just one simple example in terms of the time management, right? But let's dig deeper in terms of what's behind the professionalism, so that help us better understand how we can demonstrate the right behaviors. This is basically the definition from the dictionary. The conduct, aims, qualities that characterize or mark a profession or a professional person, right? And this tells you actually, depending on different professions, different industry, it could be somewhat different, right? And the individual behavior is what we want to see to demonstrate this professionalism. Again, any example, when you think about the conduct, the behavior, the aims or quantities, can you type some of the examples you think can demonstrate this professionalism based on this definition? What kind of quantities, what kind of behaviors are we talking about? We mentioned one skill, like time management is one of them. Any other example? Opposite of personal, demonstrate objectivity. That's interesting. Yeah, that's definitely sometimes being a professional means we'll take a critical view, right, and demonstrate your critical thinking rather than take things personally. Proper body language, that's what we're going to talk about. Part of it is your image, right? Both physical image, but also your workplace image. That's part of it too. Any other examples? Again, not let your thought, emotion, opinion getting in the way. That's definitely a huge thing in terms of communication, right? And that's what we're also going to touch. One of our slides is how to understand different communication style. There are different styles. Some of people tend to more communicate, focus on the personal level. Some of them more like focus on the facts. Sometimes it's a different style, but you need to adjust it by understanding different people's style. The bottom line is you don't want to get it like get things personal. Thank you, Kane and Patrick, for your input. And this is another thing, because this we also in this session we're also going to talk about not only at the in-person workplace, but now the new norm is everyone work remotely, especially in this couple of years. But even I think when this whole COVID situation is over, the new norm may end up working in hybrid, or some of the professions actually going to go for fully remote. A lot of companies, especially IT. So this remote work is hot topic, but also it's a very important for us to understand in a remote work setting how we can demonstrate the professionalism. And this is the one survey in terms of the challenge. Right? As you can see, the biggest challenge is basically communication, social opportunities. It's all connected to whether they can, you have enough opportunity to communicate. This whole remote setting actually changed the parameters of communication. I read an article, one of the most missing thing is this spontaneous opportunity to communicate. In the workplace in the old days, almost feel like ages away, we've been working remotely almost 1.5 years, right? So in the work, basically when I remember what I'm missing, even at a personal level, is that those kind of spontaneous opportunity. You walk in the hallway, you can have a chat, right? And then when you go to the water cooler, you meet your coworker, you can have a chit chat and really connect at the personal level. And then sometimes you can just knock on the door, right? This kind of spontaneous is quite acceptable in an in-place setting. But in a remote setting, it's very awkward. It's almost everything, every single small things you want to talk to a coworker, you need to set up a meeting. And that gives everyone, a lot of people feel it's an effort, it's lack of that spontaneous, and sometimes they just choose not to do it. That even make it worse in terms of they may feel more lonely and isolated because of lack of that opportunity. We're going to talk about later. Part of it, the solution here is really the intentionality and taking initiative. And we're also going to talk about in terms of meeting, which is the most common communication channel, Zoom meeting. What are some of the things you need to be aware of, the etiquette? So, like we mentioned earlier, part of the professionalism demonstrated is through your image. And definitely one of the first thing people see you, especially nowadays in a remote setting, is what you wear, right? And that's what they say in a room meeting, your dress, what you wear is even more important because you demonstrate yourself not as a three-dimensional, it's a two-dimensional. You lack of a lot of in-person verbal cue or non-verbal cue. Now, in a remote setting, all they can see in the most dominant image is what you're wearing, actually, what you're wearing in the top, right? These days, sometimes you can get away wearing jogging pants if you don't suddenly stand up. A lot of people, that's why in the last couple of years, in the retail industry, they sell more dress on the top rather than the dress pants. So the dress code, if you really think about it, basically there's the formal, less formal, business casual, and the picture I chose here, it's more like business casual. It's an example, which is the most common dressing code for a lot of workplaces. Again, depending on the industry, depending on the specific company, it might be different. So the best way to find out is even in an interview stage, this could be part of the end of interview question. You can ask about the dressing code to understand the culture, right? And ideally, if you can find out before your interview, it will give you a better idea what to wear in the interview. The bottom line for the interview is you always dress one level up to the company dressing code to attend the interview. For example, if the company dressing code you figured by talking to some of your network contacts is business casual, then for your interview, definitely go for formal business, right? So at least one level up. But when you start to work there, then you have opportunity to do this observation. You will have a better sense. Just to be a good observer, pay attention to what are your coworkers, supervisors wearing, and if you're not sure, it's okay to ask questions. And again, in a remote setting, before the camera is really important. Basically, the bottom line is treat as if you are meeting face to face. Meaning, like you need to keep the eye contact. I'm still practicing that because the room setting, as you can tell, if you view the PowerPoint, it's basically in front of you, but the camera is actually more at the top of the laptop. So now I'm practicing, I'm looking at the camera. Can you tell? It more makes you feel like I'm looking at you and smiling at you. But it's hard for me to constantly looking at the camera because I do need to look at the PowerPoint and sometimes also look at myself. And that's something you don't want to, when you talk to others, make sure you put yourself, if you open your camera, put yourself, the camera in a very small setting so that you don't get distracted by yourself because you don't want to look at yourself, you want to look at others, which is the camera. We're gonna shortly show a video to give you more tips in terms of the online meeting, the camera and everything. And another area of the image is basically the workplace. Again, in the in-person setting, it's about your work desk, right? And it tells a lot in terms of whether you are organized, whether it's sometimes even people associate with that with your competency. And when that nowadays in a remote setting, sometimes you can get away. Like you may not be able to, you won't know my desk setting if I don't show you. But there's another thing you need to pay attention is the virtual background, right? So in this case, definitely keep it simple. If you can do some virtual background, there are some good virtual background you can even get from the UFT, some of the resources to use UFT as a virtual background. But sometimes be careful, virtual background make use extra bandwidth. That's why today I choose not to use the virtual background just in case the network bandwidth is not stable. But definitely make sure it's a simple, clean background. That's basically one example of professionalism. And also virtual background in terms of light, right? You make sure you have enough light and always check beforehand the sound and the connection, always have a backup. Let's look at this. I'm gonna show you the short video to give you some of online meeting etiquette. A lot of good tips here.
Connect, whether in your Toastmasters club, at work, or just as a way to connect with friends. Here are a few tips to follow as you participate in an online meeting. Test your technology. It's always a good idea to set up and test your technology before the meeting starts. Make sure your camera, headphones or speakers, and microphone are all working before your meeting, not during. We recommend joining meetings early, especially if you're going to speak during them, for just this reason. Eliminate noise. If possible, join online meetings while sitting in a quiet space. Before the meeting starts, try and eliminate any noises that may be distracting, including silencing your phone. Your microphone may pick up background noise, and that can be a major distraction for other meeting participants. Mute your microphone. To take the previous tip a step further, we recommend muting your microphone whenever you aren't speaking. This simple step is an easy way to guarantee that background noises, movements, breathing, or other sounds don't distract from whoever is currently speaking. When it's your turn to speak, just remember to unmute your microphone. Make eye contact with your camera. Eye contact is an important part of any speech, and it's something that people struggle with when meeting online. The best way to mimic eye contact online is to focus on your webcam and not your screen or anything else around you. If it helps, you can make this fun by attaching googly eyes or a smiley face to your webcam. Think about your background. If there is anything in your background that may be distracting, try and move it before the meeting. Some online meeting platforms allow you to blur your background, while others allow you to change it altogether. These are both good options to hide what otherwise might distract speakers and fellow meeting participants. Use proper lighting. If you're going to be on camera during an online meeting, it's important to make sure others can see you. To ensure that happens, work in a well-lit room and avoid having any lights point directly at your camera. Treat it like any other meeting. Online meetings may be awkward at times, but behaving as you normally would in person will make it less so. Dress, speak, and behave like you would during any other meeting, and you'll be just fine. If you wouldn't do it during an in-person meeting, don't do it in an online one. Follow these tips and you'll be contributing to successful online meetings in no time.
Great. That was a short, but with a lot of tips. Anything? I think some of them probably you are practicing already, but any one takeaway from the short tips? I know one thing I learned is basically, again, just to consciously looking at the camera, it suggests you can put a googly eye or smiley face that catch your attention to look at the camera. Again, now I'm practicing look at the camera. Anyone have one takeaway? Maybe you can start to practice. And they also talk about the definitely looking at the camera. Yeah, I know it's a constant practice. Even I've been doing this for a year, I still don't have that constant habit. And that's why I find that basically the putting something besides your camera can catch your attention. Yeah. And also the light, when we talk about not some light going to your camera, which means you don't want to sit behind the window and then your face will be totally dark. You will rather facing the window. Yeah, that's why we do encourage you to open the camera when you go for the meeting, because that creates another level of connection. Especially when you do the like this couple of days in employer event networking session, one of the common question, how can I create a good first impression? If you don't even open your camera, where is the first impression coming from, right? So open the camera just to present yourself as a full person, including your physical image and all the different communication and also it's show up respect, right? And background noise for sure. For here, I do need to apologize. You may hear here and there, my kids are still taking their online classes. My older one is very active speaking up in class, which I do encourage her, but sometimes her answering question is a bit loud. You may hear that. And that's part of the remote working challenges, right? But these 3 days, I actually set the rule to them. When I'm presenting, don't come to this room, bottom line. Okay, so let's look at another area in terms of being professional. End of the day, it's building professional relationships, right? Positive relationships. And as a newcomer, as someone that just started, start as a good observer is always a good idea, because that's a way for you to learn what's going on in terms of learning about the culture, in terms of the dressing code, and then what's the rule of thumb, right? It's part of the culture, and not every culture, most of the culture part is not visible. The invisible part is what we call the rule of thumb. People don't talk about it. It's not in the policy or rule, the paper, but it takes a lot of observation to understand what's going on. And again, be someone, like, show your curiosity. You can always ask questions. One of the ideas, you want to find someone you feel comfortable, like maybe your coworker who started a couple years earlier. And then you can really learn a lot from what they have been through when they started, and ask some of the insights, office team dynamics questions, right? And the safest, the topic to first start is to ask about their role, because people like to talk about themselves, right? You can always use it as a good starter to really try to help you get to know each other. And of course, you need to share who you are. And that's where still this kind of elevator pitch, or when you are in a workplace, it's not the elevator pitch anymore, but still you want to present professionally when you introduce yourself. You may want to have some key points keep in your mind when you introduce yourself, especially at the beginning stage, right? And lesson about learn from their experience, right? Prepare the questions if you having a scheduled meeting, coffee chat, right? Because you are taking the initiative, and then you want to really respect their time. And when you go for the meetings, it's always good to do some extra homework because, again, as someone starting new, there's a lot to learn. If you do extra homework, that make you feel more prepared. I think our keynote speaker on the first day, one of the key tips she shared is really prepare, like practice networking beforehand, even mentally in her mind, right? And also when you do show up, take initiative to say hello. I remember on her slide, once it's simple say hello can create a lot of like initial good impression. And another area of workplace relationship is with your supervisor. Sometimes, again, it depends on what culture you're coming from. If you come from a hierarchy culture, which is more like Eastern, like the Chinese culture, for example, like because I'm a Chinese, I can just talk, like share. Of coming from that kind of culture, you always feel the supervisor or your boss, it's more like image of authority, right? Okay, so this again apply. Oh, I like the stamps still there, the stars. That's good. It's a decoration. Building the relationship in a remote workplace. These are some of the good tips. Always take initiative, initiate coffee chat and small talk, because in a remote setting, you lose that real human connection, right? And the human connections a lot of them come from the personal level, have the opportunity to know each other as a person. And one of the book practice is the small talk. Again, because we don't have the hallway chit chat, water cooler chat, even small talk, we need to be intentionally set up a time. So it's quite okay nowadays just to ask for coffee chat. And actually in our team, since we started working remotely, our manager just set up 3 times a week in the morning, around 9 o'clock coffee chat, but it's optional. It's an open invitation. Everyone can join around that time. And just to give people some space and time to really connect each other at the personal level, to know our challenges or our celebrations. Doesn't have to be work related, right? So this is a lot of, I know not only our team, but some other departments also practice. They may have some monthly Zoom party, that kind of thing. But at an individual level, it's okay to say, once you introduce your child, so you again find someone you feel comfortable, it's okay to ask, is there, when you have time in the next couple of weeks, can we have about a 20 minutes coffee chat just to get to know each other, for me to learn more about your role, that kind of thing. So you need to create that opportunity in this case, so that you can help, it can help you stay connected. Use connectors, basically, is find a person who you think they know a lot of people. They've been here for a long time, right? Could be your supervisor, could be your manager, right? And that's what we call a hub in a network. A hub is basically connect many other computers, right? So if you can identify this type of person, make sure you build a good relationship with them, and always ask, is there anyone else you can recommend me to talk to? Sometimes you want to go out of your circle. For example, in U of T, there are so many departments. You don't want to just siloed in your own team, only know your own team practice. Even in student life, there are many other departments. You may want to know more about other departments, so that you can understand the whole big company culture, right? And build mentorship. Again, your supervisor, depending on individual, can be a good starting point. It's okay after you get to know each other, ask if he or she willing to be your mentor. But if it's not your supervisor, you need to take it more time to build this rapport and relationship before you ask someone to be a mentor. You don't ask them to be a mentor at the first time. Even that person, you think highly of them, you think you will benefit a lot from their experience. Mentorship is something you build throughout the time. At some point, you feel that person, when you feel that person, you get to know that person, you feel that person is quite open, willing to help young professionals, you can tell, right? And then at some point, use your own judgment. You can ask, I really learned a lot from you, and I would like to keep this connection going. Would you mind my mentor, even in a virtual setting? Which means it's a less of ask, right? It could be just let's have a virtual coffee chat once a month. Yeah. Okay, towards the end, basically another big practice to demonstrate your professionalism is through email. Again, in the remote setting, it's even more important. A lot of communication through the email. What the principles is always have a good informative subjective, that subject 9. That means you need to always include the subject 9 so that people see the subject and know what's this about. They can prioritize whether to read it right away. It's a respect for their time, right? And then also have a professional greeting or preambles. If someone you contacted before, it's always you can start. Hope you are having good start of week, or hope your semester is going well. If it's a totally stranger the first time you approach, sometimes it's okay just to start with introduce yourself. like who you are and get to the point. What's the purpose of the email? How did you get to know their name, right? Or my coworker introduced me to talk to you and to get more information about what. So the bottom line is you want to be get to the point quickly, and then use succinct message body. One of the best good practice is the paragraph length in the email shouldn't be more than 3 or 4 lines, right? Don't write long paragraphs in the email. It's even a good practice to use bulletin points because it's very easy to follow, especially the action items. So always include the action items so that you know after people read your email, they know what you expect from them. And ask if there's a deadline, make sure you include the time frame, right? And definitely be aware of all of this. The fonts, all this is part of your image, right? Excessive exclamation. I know for some expressive person, easily get excited. They tend to use a lot of exclamation, but sometimes there's a balance. I know some people perceive it as like talking loudly. It gives people impression you are almost shouting, right? So you need to be careful using that. Even that could be you tend to have that kind of enthusiastic style. It's just this is just one example. Oops. One. Improper, like very inappropriate, too short, too informal. That's not the way you communicate at workplace. Maybe to your friend, this kind of email message is okay. This is a more proper example. So this one is a good example. I'm writing to email what's the purpose and what's the situation and what's the action items if they need to contact you, right? Yeah. Oh, we are already 1 minute left. So basically, this is a 2 simple case questions. You can take a quick look and then think about what would you do in terms of the not realize you cannot meet one or more of the deadlines. Anyone can input? Oh, anyone can input your answer for question number 1. Maybe we'll just go through question number 1 as an exercise. So there's multiple deadline. You realize you cannot finish it. You already started. How would you communicate? And even worse, the supervisor is not there. Let's combine the second one. What would you do? Anyone wants to share? Again, I will just briefly, the idea here, you want to keep it open, ask more, like approach your supervisor with more question, right? In terms of you have thought about it, try to ask the supervisor to help you prioritize how this task, which one is more important. Ask them to give you some ideas in terms of prioritize, and then you will propose the solution, what you would do. You always, when you approach the supervisor, always prepare with question, but also prepare with your tentative solution to that question, because that shows your initiative, right? Prioritize and let people know you need more time and cannot do it. Yeah. And sometimes prioritize, you need supervisor's input. If their supervisor is not available, again, you can ask some of the coworker who has more experience, or it could be, sometimes there's a backup supervisor. Yeah. Okay, I think we are right on time, covered everything. It's a lot of information, but hopefully you have some takeaway. You can input one takeaway from this 1 hour, and something you want to start practice from now on, even one small thing to take away, that would be helpful.